mountain exists. Oh, transition. Now, defensively, Marcus Alder said they communication is everything. Communication rules and vision for the San Antonio Spurs. They've got to make sure they talk. He said that when they were in transition defense in game 4, a lot of times the guys were worried so much about their individual matchup that they weren't communicating with one another. So Spurs absolutely have to make sure they find the shooters, and that is going to be for them tonight. We'll see what happens. Let me tell you a little story. The big league first game for the Spurs, I asked him what the difference was playing for the Spurs compared to other teams that he played for. He said the Spurs are like the military. Well, obviously, you know that the military isn't worried or focused on conflicts they're not involved in, so they're worried about the task at hand. And that's exactly what's going on with the Spurs. I talked to Manu Ginobili. He said game 5 is game 7 for us. He said that every possession, we got to treat it like it's a game-changing possession. So that's the right mentality to take into this series. Look, history tells us that 83% of the time, the winner of game 5 will win the series.
Indeed, and we should mention that all the hardcore Spurs fans know that Pop is a big-time military man from the States, the Air Force Jesse. After opponents dropping the Spurs have combined in 7 NBA titles. So when you across the mountain, you say it's your own player. That's like the right getting a second half of the story this evening. Now, the other half, of course, does involve the Houston Rockets. And the best player that San Antonio has is absolutely a man this season in shoot-around today. The more productive on Kowaliga, many think is the best two-way player in basketball. And like the Antonio, we're all aware of Leonard's ability to literally pick up the hammer if he needs to.
He's all it takes. Yeah, he takes up a lot of time. He's got to be focused and all that. But again, we're trying to contain as much as we can. All about can't think about what some things you cannot do with something. Here's what it is. You got to make sure we do all this.
Easier said than done. Tim McMahon is coming to the Rockets this evening. He was the fan coming there saying that one of the guys that actually have to go out and do saying about how they're going to try and compete.
Well, I mean, you just have to try to make tough shots. Really, that's all first and foremost. In several reasons, there's a reason he made it as the rest of the series. You know, he's the guy, one of the best defenders in the league, and as well equipped as anybody in regard to Kawhi Leonard. But here's the thing: Kawhi Leonard makes tough shots. He makes tough shots. I mean, tonight he went 13-16 before, scored 34 points the last time there in this building. It's not like he was getting a lot of easy stuff. So it's a difficult task for several reasons. Certainly, you tell him to and the guys protecting the rim. But there's a reason why there's a little more.
No question about it. 2A superstar, finals MVP, a couple of John actually mentioned that about something the other day twice, and that's us too. Before I let you go, the Lakers just information today in the last game. The Rockets are making a little bit of a change to their starting lineup. What's the plan here again for the
Yeah, the same way they went in the second half of game 4. Aaron Gordon is in the starting lineup. Ryan Anderson's coming off the bench. Now, this is not a demotion for Ryan Anderson. They need him now to shift to get to be in the center for the second year. So they're going small all the time. And really, who just puts a lot of pressure on is James Harden because they need Ariza, despite him playing Kyle Porter guard for Kawhi Leonard. That means James Harden has to bang with the big guy, whether it's Kyle Gasol or LaMarcus Aldridge. He has to bang with him, has to play post defense. He says, that takes a lot out of him, but he understands the challenge that he needs to take for his team, given the situation he is.
No question about it. Eric Gordon, the sixth man, is doing Eric Gordon is here the starter. The starter again tonight. Really good five on that. Might go right in. In the back, getting a second. Coach, I guess over here, they get a second coaching on the program. We're going to take this week. In 6 weeks, the 6 is coaching. The coach is the second one. The second one is the coach. You're trying to come to the sick boy. It's called sick boy. That's the thing. Controlling the pace, which I just go to the pace. How can you
yourself, if you're shooting the game, it's really difficult to do. You can't get back and play half-court defense unless you do a good job on offense. The rule is that you take the ball out of bounds. Don't turn it over for sure. Don't fucking get off-balance shot with their really close to it. Shooting the ball too quickly. It's a good shot. And obviously, anytime you put it in, you get to backside. It's a good shot. But it's as simple as that. A team like Eastern Golden State is very much the same as this team. That's just like control of the pace. Put the ball in the basket. They would play. It's just simple. So now it's not Patrick Beverly. All right, give Kawhi Harden's not like that. He's trying to take him away, and because Harden's so far back, it's not out there for James Harden. They've got the switch they want. It's back there. James Harden. James Harden can take advantage of that. I'm going to shoot over here. So the Harden will use a one shot. So one of the things like D'Antoni can do is run small pick and rolls. That might be one reason you see Eric Gordon starting out tonight. So you have Eric Gordon. Patrick Beverly setting screens for James Harden, or vice versa. The whole point of the screen action is to get the one James Harden and make things a little bit easier for James Harden. He's going to set the one with his 2 passes, especially. That's why I told you that. They're going to move into the back to the line of the game. And we'll get more impressive. As, again, you can't think about the big one off the right. Comes next, you'll see it in a minute. So you get the 5 foot coming over, get the 6. He's on the end screen. It'll be a good one. Somebody. For San Antonio, Thursday night. Tonight we'll have a lot of good fun again. On the break here, Thursday at the Broncos. And so they'll have a big fight that Cardinals going to be from the South. Let's do a session on Steelers to Blitz. How can you hold that? We're going to see the field for the answer. What you see today, it's up here in the box. As a little maybe. Not really quick. I'll tell you why. You think Bryce Harper gets a look at what the case may come in? It's a surprise to that. You think that was bad? I think they don't come that way. You think it's all obvious. It's been
that's why we pioneered this type of game. We made our careers with Albert's line, whatever you're like. Driving to their cars. Now the words are part of our very fabric. 2017 Mitsubishi Outlander School. Cut it down with $50,000 cash back. And so we're going to $500 cash back. Get up, we're going out. And then just use pizza rolls. Lakita presents how to win in business. Step 1. Point decisively on underclasses. Abracadabra, the stage is yours. Step 2. Choose Lakita, the only hotel where you can receive loyalty points for a free night instantly and win in business. increasing. Add 6 strips of big apple to smoked bacon, and when it's bacon here, it's just different. It's delicious.
Already in order? You want some appetizers?
America's #1 sporting goods store is always open. Every season starts with Blitz.com. When it comes to heartburn, trust the brand doctors trust. Nexium 24 Hours is the #1 choice of doctors and pharmacists for their own treatment heartburn. No night protection can manage the burn, but Nexium 24 Hours.
Why is all cashback cards like earning bonus cashback so complicated? There's only where you can earn bonus cashback to a few places, and those places keep changing every 2 months. The Quicksilver card from Capital One doesn't do any of that. With Quicksilver, you earn unlimited 1.5% cashback on every purchase everywhere. When complicated, what's it doing?
She knows the good times well, the tough times. Listen, Ever-Us collection. One button for the best friend, one button for your true love. Now in white and rose gold for Mother's Day. Ever-Us, available at Sales Jack.
Rule number 10, Section 2H states a player shall not run with the ball without dribbling it. That's the rule. What about our politics? Are there any rules anymore? And if so, will anybody play by them? These days, politics is used all by the rain. And we're not afraid of globalism. What we got is this for days. Yeah, well, if you use Progressive standard price tool, maybe you could use the savings to buy a decent suit. Ouch! What? Progressive standard price tool. What do you call it?
Sports Center is plenty fun. Progressive. Good at discounts. Dribble.
You know, they used to call everybody in that hard yet. The last 2 years, they're saying not good for them. Suspension, the fallout, and his next one. Unbelievable. I'm going to get out of here. Don't ask me on Friday.
I'm extremely embarrassed about my actions. I apologize to my teammates, to the Mets organization, to the Wilcons, and all the way down to the Mets fans for doing what I did. And yes, I was out on Friday night, past curfew. I did play golf. Saturday morning, I put myself in the bad place to be ready for showing up for a ball game. That is my responsibility. I take full blame for that. I apologize to my teammates and apologize to the coaches. I'm doing everything in my power so that never happens again. So, like I said, I'm extremely embarrassed with my actions. I'm looking forward to getting things back on track.
Yeah, I just feel how much pride
organization going forward. And they all have my word.
Really? Because this isn't exactly about the team. After a mess up, hopefully going to be a hot start this season, but he's strong in his last 3. All of the gifted passes are amazing. He's done a not so amazing job. 1-0 lead already. Hasn't struck out more than 2 records in a game. 16 goals, 16
we do a TV radio show.
Yeah, well, it's kind of strange because, you're not used to seeing ball players in that kind of element. They're used to just talking about what's going on the field, what's going on right here behind you right now. But that's not what was going on with Matt Harvey. He certainly sounded contrite. He didn't sound as if this was something that really this three in final period done right now?
Yeah, we went Friday to Milwaukee to see what happens. On the other side, the guys are shooting playoffs. Your opponents here and saying about this, and we're going to support this and get you good.
He said, respect is still high in this clubhouse for Matt Harvey. And, you know, they want to see it before it actually gets implemented. But it's not just in the clubhouse where the support is going to be important for Matt Harvey. He's going to need that support in other places too.
Matt's got a pretty good support group. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to help him. I think he's going to use them. I don't think he thinks he has to go by himself anymore.
Yeah, one of the people that has actually reached out to Matt Harvey, we found out from Terry Collins, was Bartolo Colon, the former Met, who of course is with the Atlanta Braves right now. He sent him a text within these past couple of days, and when you asked Terry Collins, what exactly did Bartolo say? He said, hey, he was supportive of it, but also challenged him. That's very important, Terry Collins to say, because these people are going to make sure that he holds himself as he moves forward from what happened this past week.
That's a exceptional experience. He gets to challenge him and really to the fact he's standing up on the guy. I'll show you he can change right back now. That's a pretty hard to do the way it's like that. And a lot of teams, they're not the best. Even
our game? This is our baseball game. They gotta use football. Well, I'm taking Not even joking.
I'm going to getting over the in I feel like
I'm making for that.
I'm glad that's around.
That's my final gift to you. Satisfaction of it.
What I was going to do is kind of just, I mean, it's probably something we should probably do some point by this week. Maybe go over, the schedule. And I know when the rest of the PC. No, they're not. I mean, it's the same kids from last year, but I think that they play. See, Danny doesn't like getting blown out. So Danny's thing is, I don't know. I feel like you got to have
You got to. And like full running back.
we don't have that. We got decent running back. He is the coach, obviously. But I don't know. They got some athletes. I think they'll be good in defense. I don't know about it. But I feel like we probably could have stayed next week and throw the ball around. See, that's the thing. His dad's I mean, like when they get one, he can do which one. That's what he can do. They get down to 4 minutes. That's the only reason I'm here. I mean, I've got all this I mean, the pick stuff, I mean, he gets like that stuff. He gets weird when you start throwing on the screen. He gets out of control. I have respect for him. When you go say yes, no, I'm hard prepared for you, no. He messed up. Man, we got shit. Well, he said that. This is the problem. I guess the first round session, he got a new drum. He came outside with the problem. He started saying a bunch of stuff about on the something doing. That's basically what he said. Yeah, really. First round session.
I know this. Not the sound.
Test.
Check.
I don't even know if you can hear me on this one.
Barely. Barely. Check.
That's
Can you hear me?
wrapped up, so
Check.
Mike's. Can you let me know? Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, she's got it.
Good Tuesday evening, everyone, and welcome into the Sports Blitz Late Morning Sports Roundup Show, live on location at Jarrett Sports Bar and Grill in downtown Alexander City, as we do each and every Tuesday from 6 to 7. Adam Blankenship, Scott Hardy here with you for the next hour or so, talking all things local sports. Some exciting things happening around the sports area. Some playoff teams still in the hunt. Reeltown softball as well as Orchard Bend softball. Reeltown wins the area, but they will travel to Troy next Friday to take on their opponents in the playoffs there. But also something that we're all excited about, and it started last week, but kind of really getting in the thick of things now, is spring practice for all of our local area football teams. And obviously you have some change and some turnover with Orchard Bend, with a new coach, with Coach Franklin, Tony Franklin leaving to take another gig, and also a change of philosophy on the offensive end for the Benton Russell Wildcats, and something too to look at from the Reeltown perspective. Coach Johnson comes in. This is his second season, so you want to see what the progress and maturation from team year one to team year two. And also you look at some things also on the Central Coosa end, year three for Barry Simmons. They actually, we'll highlight one of his former players or players from last season's team who moved on to the community college level to play a little football. But he, along with the new, now his second year for the Dayville Tigers, Kyle Caldwell, offense coordinator there, so he's a little more establishment on that end. So really excited to see some of the things that are happening on that end, so we can kind of really dive in on that end. But Blank, again, midst of spring practice, playoff baseball and softball, Kendall Graven as well. So first off, how you doing tonight, man?
Pretty good, man. Like you said, a lot going on right now in the season. A lot of seasons coming to an end, and a lot of them really just start from being this far in the playoffs. But yeah, man, overall pretty good. Keeping up with what's going on with this. Another thing we're looking at is soccer. This is just random as I scrolling through some of the stuff. I mean, it was Silicaga's making a large run right here. Like they have a good shot of making it and playing for a state championship. So there's a lot going on in the area. It's a good time of the year. Weather's nice. Baseball is coming to an end. Soccer's coming to an end. And spring football is here. Before you know it, fall football will be here. It seems like as fast as everything's going, it's already middle of May already. So yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, and you think about it, especially on the football end, how quickly the season came to a close. Everybody's excited for it to begin in the fall, and you look up 10-game stretch, and if you're fortunate enough to go a little further in the playoffs, you're looking at 14 games. That's over in December. The talk of high school football kind of dies down after January, early February, as the recruiting process comes to a close. And then you start talking about who's coming in, coaching changes happen. Obviously, I guess from the Alex City perspective and Benjamin Russell, I think that the biggest change will be the shakeup on the coaching end for the Opelika Bulldogs. Brian Blackman leaves, goes on to Auburn University, and they bring in McGill Toolin's head coach. So a large turnover there after back-to-back state championships or back-to-back appearances for McGill Toolin, losing one to Hoover and obviously winning the other. They are on the verge, Opelika, I think, of finally, hopefully getting over the hump. And I'm assuming that was really the thought process in bringing him in. But lots of things to talk about from a football perspective. And obviously, when it gets to this time of the year, everybody does want to kind of dive in on the football side. So you can't get enough of it, whether it be on the collegiate level, NFL, free agency, the draft recaps, and especially on the local level, where high school football is the king. And the new sports editor for the Outlook had a column last week about the differentiating the importance of spring football in the South and the spring football in the North. And so she comes from Pennsylvania, where it's really non-existent. It's not a big deal. And not to say that Pennsylvania actually does produce a lot of high school athletes in terms of being recruited. But on the other end, I think people Coach Horn's been talking about spring practice since February. So since the season of, they've been prepping for this. So for football hungry fans and just sports in general, we're very fortunate to be in the Lake Martin area where there's so many great teams. Talk about Reeltown, Horseshoe Bend, Benjamin Russell, Dale, Central Coosa, and then you did kind of bring up a team that's out of our service area, and talking about the football end, Cole Grogan, who broke who is the all-time scoring leader in the state, also broke the single season scoring record last week as well. So he's just dominated. And again, if you haven't had the chance to check out Sports Blitz's interview with him, please do so. Very great kid, and someone who deserves the recognition he's been receiving. And obviously his play has propelled them onto this Final Four run. He and another one of his players is a forward for Sylacauga. He's going on to play at AUM, so their two top players are going on to play at the next level. So that lets you know kind of what you're dealing with that tandem. And obviously, you would hope that he would still have been able to do it from a Wildcat uniform, but to not have him here, but to still watch him do his thing as an Aggie has been fun to watch. So congratulations to Cole, and good luck to the Aggies as they move forward. But I'm sure Nick will be able to give us a rundown of how things go on the Final Four. Yeah, definitely. It seems like they have a pretty interesting matchup with Randolph County coming up. Looks like Randolph won 1-0 in all their games up to this point. Sylacauga and, of course, Cole have been scoring tons of goals this year. So it's going to be interesting to see. It seems like Randolph County, I think they've also held everyone to shutouts, basically, too. So they may play more of a defensive game. I was about to talk trash about them. I was like, they're not going to lose to Randolph County. That just sounded like they would. I know, right? Like when I saw, I was like, Randolph County play soccer. I didn't even know they had a soccer team. But so that's going to be interesting to keep up with that. But touching on a couple of things that you were talking about there, I bet it is a pretty big difference from coming up from Pennsylvania area down here to keeping up everything. It's kind of madness down here. How long has she been here for? I think she's going on 3 weeks, and she hit the ground running. Where did she move from? She moved, I don't know what city in Pennsylvania. She's actually from Virginia, and she went to VCU, moved on to Pennsylvania as a sports reporter, and then took the sports editor's job in Outlook. And so the connection, especially for our show, that there's a good dynamic there between what we do, which is covering it, and she reports it. So it's just a little different there. So we give opinions on it while she reports the facts. And so I think there's a good dynamic, and she's been really good from a content perspective for this show, and keeping us involved and keeping us knowledgeable on some things that we haven't really been able to catch up on as much as previously, like with track and field, or some schools around the area who have players going on to the next level, like Tyus Evans for the Central Coosa Cougars, who plays receiver, moves on to California to a JUCO, and we'll award him the Lake Martin Area Player of the Week a little later in the show. But it's been really exciting to get to know her, and she brought a different feel. And I will say this, and on her behalf, the coaches and players within the sports community, Lake Martin community on the sports end, have really taken to her. And it's Randolph School. That makes more sense. There we go. Shout out to my beforehand, our producer, for setting us straight. That did sound kind of weird. I'm like, Randolph County? I was like, what are they going to do? But again, ugly. I couldn't really anticipate that. But those Huntsville schools, seeing now that they are from Huntsville, they that'll be a tough match. Shows how much we know about soccer. Yeah, sorry guys. Wildcats out. I really that's all I got. There you go. But again, we're just getting started here on the Lake Martin Sports Roundup Show. Adam Blankenship and Scott Hardy here with you for the next 45 minutes, talking all things local sports. We'll go ahead and take our first break of the evening, and we'll return. We'll talk a little bit about some of the area scene, and then also something that we're looking forward to doing is kind of giving, as we start the show and as spring practice is happening, I'm looking forward to really breaking down some of our local teams in terms of what to expect coming up. I know we're a little out, but we'll have an opportunity to kind of break that down as well. So again, we'll go ahead and take our first break of the evening. More of the Lake Martin Sports Roundup Show right after this. What up? I saw it. Hey man, how you doing? You got a date? No. Might be. Might have tonight. I'll tell you, I'll go let you talk. You want to? You don't mind. All right, come on. What do we want to talk about?
What's going on? Really, we're talking like spring practice, but we can, whatever. Yeah. Whatever. What's going on right now? U.S. Open's coming up. See? Y'all talk about golf? We're kind of restricted on what we can talk about on this show because it has to be kind of local, but we can figure out a way to bring that in. We can talk about like what's our area of the team, like yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about. Might talk about
Yeah,
I can definitely talk about that.
that'd be good. It'd be good to talk about the days of.
No, I'm saying you can take mine. Well, give us a minute to get through this segment, and then I'll come and get you.
Do you hear anything on this right here? All right.
Welcome back in, and thanks for joining us here on the Lake Martin Sports Roundup Show. Adam Blankenship and Scott Hardy here with you for the next 40 minutes or so, talking all things local sports. During that first segment, we kind of had a hodgepodge of topics that we discussed, kind of giving a preview of topics that we'll be discussing tonight. But obviously, again, when you're in the thick of spring practice, that's a heavy topic in terms of what people want to discuss and hear about. So obviously, when we have the opportunity to discuss anything local, we like to try to start with our Wildcats here in Alexander City. So the Wildcats coming off a season where they only had 3 victories. They finished 3-8 on the season. Danny Horn's worst season since his second season as a head coach. They had 4 straight 10-win seasons prior to that. That senior class before last year's team was the second winningest team in Benjamin Russell history. So there was a large gap in terms of the shoes that would have to be filled from a talent perspective coming from the 2015 team to the 2016 team. But they did well. That although the record was 3-7 in the regular season, they did enough in the region to be able to make the playoffs. They do fall to Hillcrest Tuscaloosa 4-16 in that first round matchup. But the Wildcats have an opportunity, I think, to kind of rebound, maybe not from a 8-9 win season, but they're a team that'll be a lot more competitive. If you look at their losses, they gave up 19 to Clay County, 19-16 in that one. Opelika blanks us 34-0. Oxford beats us 29-21. Minor 56-22, Helena 35-24, Wetumpka 41-14, and my man, Mr. LaDainian Webb, 63 points scored against the Wildcats in that matchup. So if you're a follower of the Wildcats, you understand that last year's team, I think, at least from a defensive standpoint, was an anomaly. You don't necessarily see a lot of times when the Wildcats want to score. We've always scored a lot of points. I will say they've always been able to score, but defensively is kind of where the bread was buttered. Always stayed in the top 10 usually in terms of points per game and total defense. Definitely was the complete opposite last year, and you could tell it early on in the season that it was going to be a little difficult because the lack of depth that you had with so many seniors leaving that class. I think they maybe had 24, 25 seniors in that 2015 class. So to come in the 2016 in the last season, having to fill some of those gaps, you had a lot of guys playing both ways. Timmy Lawson starts the season at quarterback, but also was playing free safety. So as Landon Cotton, who now will be the starting quarterback going into this season, the 2017 season rather, I think that while there is a shift of offensive philosophy, they were more of a spread team prior to last season. Coach Smith has done an outstanding job as offensive coordinator. He, along with some of the position coaches, have really developed a lot of guys that you looked at them in the 8th or 9th grade, maybe didn't realize that they could be that good, but have really turned it on. Now going to a wing T, and it takes a specific personnel to be able to do that. So I know that I trust Danny Horn on football more than I trust a lot of people. And so if he thinks that this is a way for the Wildcats to be more effective and to be able to win more games than the 3 they did last year, then I'm going to trust that his going to the wing T is going to help. And you have somebody like Nakobe Maxwell having to replace that type of dynamic player, as well as the offensive line that you're losing. You lose Carter Jones, who goes on to the next level of the play. So you have some guy, Jordan Alexander goes on to the next level of the play. So you're replacing a lot of guys, and so maybe they don't feel as comfortable running that style as they did before, especially from a pass protection standpoint. So they move to the wing T, but David Herron comes in, multi-sport athlete, somebody that I think Wildcat fans had the chance to see last year, played the tight end position. He was out a few games, but when he came back, you could see an explosion on the offensive end. Also plays basketball, great athlete. So obviously it'll be kind of like with Timmy or with Landon trying to come in and replace Tyree. It won't be Nakobe, but I think we have a great replacement in David Herron.
Yeah, definitely. And touching on last season, and not to make excuses, but you have to look at the schedule we played last year too. I think when I think about last year, that's one of the things that sticks out is just how strong it was from week 1 all the way down to the very end there, because we faced so much talent. Like you said, LaDainian Webb at Beauregard ended up winning a state championship there and everything as well too. It's just one of those years, It's one of those years it's a lot of tough losses, lots of lessons to be learned. So I'm sure they're using that this spring as they're trying to prepare and get ready. And I think one of the beauties of Coach Horn, coach philosophy and his system and everything is how he's not afraid to adjust that offense. I think that he's going to put his team in the best position to win no matter what. And I like that he's not scared to switch it around and change it up each year. Because you got to. You got to be flexible because you can't recruit legally in high school. So I mean, you kind of got to work with what you have. So I like that he's not afraid to do that, and not just be stubborn. Because a lot of coaches will be like, well, this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? So I think that's interesting to see, and I'm really excited about this year for the Wildcats because, like I said, a lot of young guys got to play a lot last year. Lost some key starters for sure, but I know for a fact that as they're out there right now in the heat and everything else, that last year's run through their mind, and they want to get better. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see how they rebound. Because I know our area that we're in, our region, everything is going to be just as strong. You have, we talked about Kowaliga, who's on the verge of winning a state championship, and lost their coach who's been there forever. Went on to coach at Auburn. You know what I mean? I mean that's how good of a program that he's built. What does Kowaliga do? They turn around, reload, and hire another coach just that caliber. He comes in who's won a lot at McGill, and so and he's inheriting a program that's tried and tested and proven, so it's not going to get any easier. But I don't think our coaching staff will want any other way, though. And I got confidence in them that we're going to get things turned around and pick up and get back to winning like we did when we did the 4 straight 10-win seasons. So
Yeah, and
it's gonna be fun.
You bring up McGill Toolen, and so his name was absent from mine. I would have brought it up the last segment, but Caleb Ross is the coach from McGill Toolen, who does go on to coach at Opelika. But looking at the region, just based off of what I know from last year's team or last year's teams and coming into this season, the Wildcats have a legitimate opportunity to fight for that second, third seed. Not to say that they're not capable of beating the caliber of team like an Opelika, but Opelika automatically, in my mind, is the number 1 seed in that region. But we don't know what they're losing as well. They were very talented, senior laden team last year as well. But something too, I will say, this will be my 10th year covering the Wildcats. And I've seen it.
Old.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, I turned 30 in December, and I was like, I turned 21 my first year doing it, and this will be my 10th year. So this it's been a whirlwind, but I've seen it where it was, 1-9, and also a player or two away from winning or going on to the state championship. So it's been a luxury of mine to really not have to deal with a cover a team. That's not the correct word, but to cover a team that wasn't successful under the Danny Horn era. And I think that as bad as the community and as bad as the players want to win, there's nobody on that field that wants to win more than Coach Horn. And so if you can match his intensity, I think it'll be reflected on the scoreboard and in the win column as the season progresses. But thing you talked about on the schedule last year, only 4 home games for the Wildcats last season. So 6 road games in the regular season. Then they traveled to Tuscaloosa for Ridgecrest. So they were not used to really. It's been a long time since the Wildcats have had to travel as much as they have been. But a lot of things to discuss, though, from a local perspective. And speaking of Nakobe Maxwell, and we'll get to the Dayville Tigers here shortly, but he, along with Margarius Buchanan, will be in Montgomery in July for the North-South All-Star Week, and it'll be a lot of fun to see that. And you and I were discussing prior to the show, really, there's not a lot to gain, although a lot of these kids may not be going on to the next level yet or have signed to the next level. I would be concerned. 1, I haven't been playing, so that's that. Then 2, you're going to get.
I think it makes no sense. I think that's a terrible idea. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, like you said, you haven't played since July.
Well, I mean,
who's
you
been
go
doing
for the 1
what?
week and go
It's going to
play.
be 150 degrees, and a lot of our seniors that are graduated. Some of them are ones that will be playing or already signed with a school, so they're not going to play. So are we going to do all-stars or we're not? You know what I mean? Like, it just don't make any sense.
It's not really true.
Like
all-stars.
you said, make it into the upcoming seniors. Let them play. The other ones that have to prove. This would be a huge way to sit there and set up, scout these players and get some players some show that maybe not as well known or not getting as big recruited right now. I just don't think it makes any sense to have kids that have already graduated. If you had told me to come back and play in July, there's no way. Why?
Yeah. Like, I mean,
and if you sign with a school, all you can do is get hurt. You have nothing to prove.
I don't think if you sign to a D1 school, you're either already gone.
Nothing to prove,
and there's nothing else for you to do. So
it's going to have like an alumni game feel.
Sport that it's like I'm pretty sure all other sports are rising seniors. So I do understand from
there's got to be some kind of rules or something,
there's
right?
Something related to that.
Of course.
And,
they don't do it.
You know what? Speaking of rules, there are a couple of ASSA rule changes that we will dive into after we come back from this break. So what we'll do is take another break, and we'll return. Adam and I will discuss the early signing period for recruits and how that could affect the area, as well as some new things from the legislative standpoint that will prohibit schools that have a high school coach that goes on to coach on the collegiate level. They must wait a probationary period before they're allowed to recruit a player from that school. So
it's just crazy. Dude.
That is crazy. It's
crazy.
All
punishing the kids.
It's all economics. But we'll go ahead and take another break. More of the Late Martin Sports Roundup show right after this. It's the weirdest thing. I didn't realize that's weird. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us here on the Sports Blitz, Lake Martin Sports Roundup Show. Adam Blankenship and Scott Harder here with you in downtown Alexander City at JR Sports Bar and Grill, as we are each and every Tuesday from 6 to 7. About 30 more minutes left in tonight's program, and we've had a barrage of topics kind of coming at us, or coming at you left and right here. But last segment talked about the Benjamin Russell Wildcats and kind of what to expect from their season. We didn't go too far because obviously spring practice hasn't ended. They'll have the Jamboree game coming up in a week or so. So we'll have a better feel for them as well as the rest of the teams in the area on what they'll be doing. But our producer, Michael Poran, brought up some points that he thought would be good topics of conversation. The first being the early signing period, which now there will be an early signing period for players to be able to basically sign in the fall. So from a local perspective,
what is that? When's the date?
I want to say it was December, but I could be wrong there. It could be October. But I don't. We'll get that together. I should know that. But
so we'll have recruits like having Santa Claus deliver commitments and stuff now. Like
it could.
He's gonna fly on a reindeer to wear a hat.
What do you think? Before we go on, what do you think about all that? Like, I mean, obviously, if you're a 17-year-old kid,
I think it's gotten out of control. I think it's the dumbest thing in the entire world. I think when it first kind of happened, it was funny, but I'm literally waiting for a kid to ride an elephant into a gym. Like I'm waiting for it to happen, or somebody to bring a tiger to school with them, and it's going to happen because all they're doing is trying to outdo the last person. I think it's kind of gotten a little bit ridiculous. Like I don't even pay attention anymore. At first, it was kind of funny. I was like, it was great.
It's in December. That is.
But now it's just like this is a joke.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
but Bama needs to bring back Facts Cam, girl. Though I'll say that.
And it. Oh
Facts
yeah,
Cam, girl.
yeah. That was that was early in the.
That was
time.
Yeah, it was
Still
kind
kind of needed it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That was back when I say pay attention to that type of stuff all the time. But.
Yeah, I have, but I mean, there was a time. I mean, we wouldn't go to class. I remember there was a time me and Michael and Chase, maybe not Chase, but I know me and Michael stayed and watched all day just the recruiting. And that was maybe like 2009, so that was or 10, which was the Dre Kirk and
those were fun times,
Barron and the McCarron days. So it was really fun to watch. And so when we, based on the relationships that you and I were fortunate enough to have in Tuscaloosa, we kind of had a first name basis with some of these guys. So it was fun to see them, watch them on TV, and then ultimately be able to see them going to the next level.
And now they're like 8 years into the league and stuff. They're like about to retire.
One day, we're not going to do it today, but if y'all didn't know, Dre Kirkpatrick is Blank's favorite Alabama player, and it's one of the greatest things ever. But going back to the early signing period, how do you think that could have affected somebody like a Nakobe, for example? Would that hurt or help him to have that ability to go ahead and sign in December?
I think it would help. I think I'm all for the early signing period. I think it's too much pressure on these kids. If they can sign early and get over with still, I mean, I think I would even go earlier than that.
I think you should be able to do.
I think do like a mid-October, like a mid-October signing period, and then do the December, and then do the regular February, because a lot of kids just want to play. Like that, they know where they want to go, and even though they do know where they want to go, they're still getting hounded all the time. You know what I mean? Like, so why can't they just enjoy that last year? If somebody say, I'm 100% committed to Auburn. Like, I'm going to Auburn. I don't care who calls. I don't care what happens. But he still has to listen to it and read about it and probably gets messages about it and Twitter mentions and everything else. It's just like, all right, let's let him play. So I'd be even for going even earlier, to be honest with you.
I like it. But to a certain extent, I think it only puts more pressure on the kid, because now, really, I take that back. Really, what it on the school, because if somebody commits in December, then can they get out? I mean, like, the official signing period until.
What happens if they sign somebody else? Like, what if they tell you you're the only linebacker coming in? You're gonna be the only outside linebacker coming in, but then so you sign December, and then February they bring in 2 other top linebacker prospects. You're like, hold up, now this is not what we agreed on.
I think the school has more power in this.
Oh, no doubt. And are they still? Can they get out of that commitment?
Well, I mean, you see things happen. Usually, what'll happen is one or two things that's happen. Either A, they have to be released.
Just want signing
and 2. I mean, I don't know. I think that
it's crazy.
If you're somebody like
now that you mention that makes a lot of sense.
If you're somebody like I don't even know now who's one of the top players. Say you were like Jameis Winston. We'll go back to that. Say you're Jameis Winston, and if you've really been heavily recruiting, you kind of have an idea where you want to go. I mean, maybe you go ahead and do it. But a lot of these kids, I think the reason they love the February side of it is because they have enough time to go ahead and take their business. And I don't know why kids don't do it enough. Even if I was going to
every single one of them you can
in America, like it wouldn't matter. Like I would go somewhere because a lot of times too, I think it'll help too from a qualifying standpoint. I think you'll know ahead of time some guys that you can go ahead and start that process. So I think what'll happen now, you'll have even more early enrollees that'll start to happen, whether it be on the JUCO level or the 4-year level. So
that's my thing too. I never understood why kids don't take all of their official visits either.
I'm going everywhere.
I'm going every one of them. I'm taking every dollar they give me. I'm getting everything free you can. You know what I mean? Because it's happening. But I mean, what do you? How many do you get? I think you get 4 or 5. Five of them. So go visit. Just because you don't, I wouldn't want to go to UCLA. But I wouldn't mind a weekend out there if they were wanting me to come look at them. You know what I mean? So
now it's getting so competitive. A lot of these coaches will say, if you take another visit anywhere, like that, we're going to call off our recruitment. So
it'll be a decision they have to make. Then.
That's true.
It depends on. It just comes back to how much leverage you have, just how good you are.
I mean, if you're Ruben Foster, you can kind of do
say, all right, do what you got to do, coach, and then they're going to still be there.
Hard in our Blankenship. They can just go ahead and say, all right, I'm going to go with Mr. Joe here. But
they wouldn't offer me a visit.
The other portion of that, though, and I think it's a great topic, is the probationary period where a team, like for Auburn, for example, Auburn can't recruit a player from Opelika High School for 2 years based on the fact that they've hired a coach from that staff. So on one hand, I truly see where that could be. Well, I understand the premise behind it, and you don't want to do anything to legitimize or delegitimize. I can't even talk today. The recruiting process more than what it already is. But on the other side, if you're the kid and you're junior in high school, senior high school, and your coach gets hired somewhere, it is not your fault that if you want to go to Auburn. Exactly. So I can't go to Auburn now because my coach has left. So there are ways for loopholes. Obviously, there would have to be a way to get out of that. But so what if I was a star player and I go to Opelika? Or go to Auburn instead now. So does that still apply because he coached me? Is it the coach himself or the school? So I don't know. There's so many rules in place that are there to protect the student athlete, but at the same time, the legitimacy of the recruiting process has already been hampered as much as it can be. Outside of basketball, I mean, AAU basketball is as dirty as it gets, but these handlers with these football players and these camps and 707s, that's it. So I think from a business side of things, the NCAA is trying, or this could have been an ASSA thing. It would have to be an NCAA issue, but there's no way that a kid should be punished based off the fact that his coach took a business decision, and the university shouldn't be punished because they went out and made a business decision to go hire somebody who was good at what they do. Yeah. And the whole purpose of recruiting is to establish those pipelines. That's what it is. That's why you bring those guys in. So I don't understand really. I understand the logic behind it, but from a enforcement standpoint, I think that this could be open up a can of worms with some stuff that people don't really want to get involved with.
I want to see where this came from because it has to originate from somewhere or somebody, So I want to see what coach brought this up and what would their reason behind that is. It's probably one of the top guys. I mean, that's how it works. But I'm just curious to see what their reason was behind that because, like you said, I don't think it makes any sense that a kid can't go to school there just because their coach was hired there.
Like Jake Bentley.
It's crazy.
With Opelika, then his dad gets hired. His dad gets hired at South Carolina.
Yeah.
Muschamp brings him in. So my dad coaches there. Yeah. I can't go there.
I can't go there because they gave him a job.
Yeah, that just seems like that could be.
But you brought up a good point, though, off air, when you said, what if you're in Opelika, your coach goes, what if you transfer to Auburn High School? Can you go then?
I mean,
I'm sure they might can the first year or so, and they'll cut that out eventually too.
I think that you should be able to. It would have to be the school and not necessarily the player itself. But according to an AL.com article that was published earlier today, Gus Malzahn's come out and said they can't sign a high school player from Opelika for the year 2018 or 19. So. Obviously, and it talks about some waivers and some things that could go get that cleared, but there's got to be some way to get around that because you're punishing the athlete and you're punishing the school based off the fact that they made a business decision to bring in a coach. And in Auburn's case in particular, Opelika's in their backyard. That's not
Yeah.
like that's a school that's in Birmingham and Huntsville, but that's a huge recruiting base for Auburn. Is the Auburn Opelika school system. So you're hampering their success level. And so if you're the SEC, where a lot of this really probably originated, this is probably some anti-SEC legislation, but it happens all over. So
isn't that the point of bringing in good high school coaches though, because they have the connections throughout the high school ranks and they have these connections for these recruits and stuff like that. Isn't that the entire point of it? I mean, it just don't make any sense. I don't know. I don't think it's really thought out very well, but as in lots of things. So
yeah. And apparently too, this was implemented in basketball in 2010. And that goes back to basketball is one of the dirtier sports. And on the recruiting side, it's not a dirty sport, but the recruiting end of it really gets kind of sketchy. But with the AU teams and the shoe deals and promises made to other people, so I could kind of see where something like that would happen, where a kid's parents or a coach was hired just to ensure that they were going to bring him in. But I'm with you. That's what it's been the entire time. The existence of sports is that. So I don't know. That's a really, really good topic, and maybe we can continue to talk about it on the other side of the break. But we are up against our next break. So when we return, Adam and Scott, back at you. More of the Late Morning Sports Roundup show right after this. Welcome back in, and thanks for joining us here on the Sports Blitz Late Martin Sports Roundup show. I want to welcome in a good friend of ours and somebody who, again, we've had on the show quite frequently, whether it be through social media or through just call-ins or actual interviews himself. He's been an active participant with Sports Blitz, and now for something he and I have been trying to get done for a while. We had an interview with him a couple of weeks ago, last week, to discuss his new signing for his baseball tenure, or career rather, on the next level, to go into Pearl River Community College in Mississippi. But today he's going to put on his broadcast hat and just talk a little NBA basketball playoffs. Austin Elliott, what's up, bro?
What's going on? Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So you and I were talking a little bit, before we came on about the playoff series and kind of the intensity level of what it's been, and you've had pretty much it's gone chalk for the most part, but you have Golden State 8-0, Cleveland Cavaliers 8-0, LeBron kind of gearing up for what's going to be another finals run. He's had 7 straight conference finals appearances. He's going for another opportunity to go play for the finals again. So I don't see anybody in the East really doing it, but on the West, again, Golden State really on the verge of again going back to a final. So get your thoughts so far. Who's your team, and kind of what have you seen so far?
Well, just like we were talking about a while ago, I feel like the NBA, almost is kind of scripted in the fact that, somehow Cleveland always finds a way to, end up being in a, perfect position with, LeBron, and same with Golden State and all that. But it's like we were talking about before the show, that series with Cleveland and Boston, pretty eventful in the fact that, Boston had a lot going on with some key players, Isaiah Thomas, to be sure, had the death in the family, and he lost like a tooth and all that. So just a lot went on, and it's pretty eventful. It was pretty good basketball. But I feel like for the mediocre NBA fan, like I am myself, it's like if your team, as soon as your team gets put out, or if they even make the playoffs, if they're in there, you're interested. If not, it's kind of like it's just whatever. But I go for the New York Knicks, so you can see how that might, So
I'm a Laker fan, so we're in the same boat.
Oh yeah, so you got to have, you have your team, you have your Knicks. Like, I'm a Knicks fan in the regular season, and when they don't make the playoffs, you have to have a playoff team. And so my playoff team was the Thunder, who also got kicked out, the first round. So that, that's how that goes. But yeah, pretty eventful basketball going on with the Cavaliers right now. I feel like they're bound to probably bring a ring back, I feel like. So.
Well, all right. So you talked about the East and how easy it's been for LeBron, and I mean this will be his 7th straight conference finals. Is it more so him? And Draymond Green comes out and talks about the caliber of competition. Feels like people aren't playing that great against them.
Right.
But on the side note, they now are looking at another opportunity. I mean, they could sweep. I mean, Washington or Boston. I'm a Washington. John Wall. My favorite player is Kobe of all time. Kobe's favorite player. But John Wall, when he played with Kentucky with Cal that year, when he was doing his dance, I fell in love with him, and I really have started to follow him a little bit more with Kobe out of the league. I think that could be a great matchup, either them or Boston. But the Cavs, I think, have the benefit that nobody else has, and that's because they have the best player in the world. And you say what you want to, whether you're LeBron hater or not, LeBron could be on any team in the East, and they would go any team in the league, but any team in the East for sure,
oh, yeah.
And it'd be the same concept. So do you think it's more the competition, or is it more LeBron?
I mean, like I said, mediocre basketball, like NBA fan right here, LeBron, being the best is just – LeBron does LeBron thing. I mean, that's about all you can say about that. But like you said about the Wizards, you can never count them out. I stopped sleeping on John Wall, like you said, back in Kentucky. He did all that stuff as a freshman. But I feel like the Wizards are coming in, hungry, kind of like the Cavaliers were last year, losing in Game 7. But yeah, the Wizards definitely. I feel like they have the tools, being John Wall, Bradley Beal, good backcourt, some help down low. I definitely feel like they have the tools to make a run, if not make anything shake in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, it should be another eventful series. I feel like LeBron will, ultimately have to take it over as usual. His team always relies on him so heavily. And, that's why I feel like that's what makes him, the best.
We'll shift over to the Western Conference before we go to break. Golden State kind of like Cleveland has the opportunity. They pretty much breezed to the playoffs 8-0. They'll take on the winner of the Rockets and the Spurs, which it's been a decent series. I mean, I'm shocked that it's 2-2. But the way that it's broken out, and Adam was talking about it before he went off, it's really just been blowouts in these games. So it really hasn't been that competitive. But you're looking at a great team in San Antonio versus a great player in James Harden. And a lot of times, especially on the pro level, the great team's always going to find a way to come out on top. It's very hard for a single individual, even if you go back to Jordan's early days when he was getting put out by the Pistons and the Celtics early in his career. He needed some help to be able to get over the top. And speaking of help, that's exactly what Golden State has with Steph Curry and Durant and Green and Thompson and Iguodala. So at any given point, you could take off any of those guys on the floor and have one of those guys be the main starter. If Steph Curry was on that team, he would be just as good.
Right.
Time, all those
Right.
guys. So do you think that with Golden State, what's more pressure before we go to break? Who's in more pressure to win it, you think? The Cavs or the Thunder? Or the Warriors?
I would definitely say the Warriors. Curry, coming off, 3 MVPs in like the last 2 or 3 MVPs in like the last couple of years. People want to see him. I feel like that people want to see him to succeed more than they want to see LeBron succeed because they're used to LeBron, doing it. He's been doing it like his whole career. So I feel like the fan base that he has, people just want to see that more. And I would definitely say they have the more pressure on him and all that. Also, though, it's like you talk about the Spurs. I always refer to the Spurs as kind of like Alabama football. They handle their business. They do it quietly, and they always find themselves ended up in a championship setting. So
I thought I liked you. I knew there was going to be something I could find that I didn't like about you bringing up the Tide. But awesome. We appreciate you coming up. Adam will come back up and we'll finish out the show. But what we're going to try to do until you leave us for Pearl River, anytime that you want to come up here and discuss anything in the sports world, we'd love to have you on. Great job for your first time. Very knowledgeable on the basketball end as well. But that was Austin Elliott, who will be a fill-in from time to time during some of our shows throughout the summer. But go ahead and take our last break of the evening. More of the Late Martin Sports Roundup show right after this. We'll, from now on, what I'll do, I'll already have some prep for you. But we'll talk about we can start recording. Yes. Did my part. Yep.
You trying to get a broadcast or something? Did he?
I really want to come on and can't see you guys. I come up here.
Yeah.
Good deal. Really just been riding the stable. Really what's been on. Wow. It's better than Sturgill.
He's all right.
He's better than Sturgill. He's all right. Y'all just like Sturgill because Sturgill has this quote unquote like mystique.
outside of that.
Welcome back to the final segment of tonight's Late Morning Sports Roundup show. We've had a pretty eventful show. Got to talk about some things that are new to the ASSA scene, as well as the NCAA scene as a whole, some things that could affect some local players and some schools down the road, some rival schools that could be impacted by that as well. Also, kind of what we're going to try to do is pick a team or two each week to discuss their upcoming season. It's also finishing out the spring practice. I'm telling you, man, you get to the last segment of the show, and I lose it. I lose it. But we do want to recognize someone for being the Late Martin Sports Roundup Player of the Week. And, again, this is something that we try to do on a frequent basis, and that is Tyus Evans of Central Coosa Cougars, who will be traveling to California to continue his collegiate career, junior college out there. So, first time the Cougars have had a football player sign in some years, and so it's really good. And I've said it from day one. Coach Barry Simmons has been a game changer for the Cougars and what he's done, not only from the football team, but the community buy-in to not just being a basketball school. So I think once that culture shifted, which we talked about, that's what would have to happen. He changed the culture of Coosa Central, and now that they have some guys coming out, before they wouldn't let basketball players – let me rephrase it. Before, maybe basketball players weren't playing football.
There you go.
Now there's been a connection made now where they're getting out a lot of these basketball players to come out and play in spring practice that weren't doing that before. So
I think your best athletes are your multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
Anyway. I think there's things you can take away from basketball that'll help you in football, and things you take away from football that'll help you in basketball.
Oh, Charles Lee, too. Forgot about that. That
Yes.
was the one thing we had to make sure we did. Charles Lee is being inducted into the Alabama chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame this Saturday, and kind of a promo for the 7 to 9 show. His son, Steve Lee, will be on the show, and Coach Lee led the Benjamin Russell Wildcat wrestling team to 11 straight championships from 1958 to 1969. Also coached football and baseball as well. We're not really as hip to it. We had some individuals win some state championships when we were in high school, and we've seen it through covering the show. But there was a time period in 2 different eras, where Coach Lee's era and Coach Busby's era, where Benjamin Russell was the best program in the state, whatever classification you wanted, one of the best wrestling programs in the country. And so I think that it's starting to get back to that point when Coach Tucker was here and Coach Tate, they really started to elevate the program a little bit more. You had Coach Campbell and Coach Pike, and so now Coach Hall. So there's an opportunity for that to go back, but it's going to be hard to replicate 11 straight championships.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about the wrestling program, we've always kind of been known and done really well in wrestling. So make sure you stay tuned for that interview. You get to hear about the history of it a little bit and find out just how dominant they were. And Scott talked about how many state championships they were able to pull off back-to-back back in the day.
Yeah, a little dreazy. But that's what we'll do. That was my more life for you there. Before we go to, I want to make this point, and we're not going to say anything else. I'm going to have the final statement for the night, and that is Chris Stapleton, Gator mouth over
No,
Sturgill Simpson.
There's no way. Just stay tuned. Let's see who's best long term. I'm not completely sold on this new Stapleton album just yet.
It's kind of how much music. No, you're not a fan of them, so you don't know. But
I wish I'm the concert.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily, you like concert, you like live music, so you went for the entertainment, not necessarily the person playing.
All right, this right here is shift a little bit. Outdoor venue, way big time Gator mouth over Civic Center venue.
I'll give you that.
The worst.
But I mean,
I'd rather listen to somebody out here on the green than go back and watch them at the Civic Center.
Because we've had it both. We've seen Lil Wayne at the amphitheater, and then we've seen him at Phillips Arena.
And it just was not the same.
It was not the same.
It's not
You're
the same
right.
at all. The amphitheater atmosphere, the outdoor live music venue is the best you can get. It's the best you can do right there, no matter what. Don't even try anything else. Civic Center, big stadiums, completely overrated. Way too. What's it called? I don't know. Clustered.
A little more intimate scene there.
There you go.
For the inside.
One with nature.
One with nature. All right. Well, let's go wrap things up here on the Late March Sports Roundup. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll get you guys prepped. Luke and Andy, Sports Live from 79 right after this.